Thanks for rising up. I'm Dawn Ennis. In this episode, new year, new start. Connecticut's new governor and the state legislature get to work with new faces, some of whom you've met right here. Also ahead, we'll meet the man who's represented West Hartford, Avon, and Farmington since 2017, who is now vying for a seat in the Senate. You know him for the TV show Derek in the District, and another channel we share in our past. Plus, a new portal opens for fans of this show. Details straight ahead. That's all coming up. But first, Ned Lamont is getting right to work as the 89th governor of the state of Connecticut. He's pledged to work for a $15 minimum wage, a new paid family medical leave system, and a balanced budget. That's a tall order given the state will start the new fiscal year in July with a deficit of $2 billion. The former business executive says he comes from a world where the numbers have to add up at the end of the month or the lights go out. And that what's required right now in Hartford is a bigger table and an open door. Lamont, of course, isn't the only new face in the Capitol, and some of them are folks I've been blessed to have as my guests. West Hartford State Representative Jillian Gilchrist, Attorney General William Tong, Solicitor General Claire Kindle, Teresa Garitana, former state senator and now senior advisor to the Office of Healthcare Strategy, and former Senator Beth Bayh is now leading the Office of Early Childhood. Those two resignations open up two new Senate seats, and one of the people who is vying for one of those seats is my guest. Derek Slapp, the state representative who has won major endorsements for one of those seats, has served as vice chair on the Committee for Energy and Technology, as well as a member of the Committees for Environment, Planning, and Development, chief of staff for the Senate Democratic Caucus, and he successfully pushed for pay equity to become the law in Connecticut. Welcome, Derek.
Good to see you.
I'm so glad to have you.
Of course.
We should call this episode Rise Up with Derek in the District.
That's right. Derek and the Dominoes, right? I think that name's taken, though.
It's taken.
Yeah.
So look at all the endorsements that you have racked up so far. I want to read some of them. Mayor Sherry Cantor, former Mayor Scott Slifka, Democratic Town Council members Leon Davidoff, Liam Sweeney, Dallas Dodge, Ben Winograd, so many other names, plus the Conard High School Young Democrats.
Right.
I mean, it's great that you have such a head start. Are you excited? And what's the latest in your bid to become a state senator?
So I'm very excited, very grateful for the support, and I think it just speaks to the ability that we've had with the individuals that you mentioned and myself to be able to work together and roll up our sleeves after the election. The last 2 years, in terms of if you look at the state budget and the challenges that it presented for West Hartford, for towns all across the state, but specifically just talking about West Hartford and being able to work together to protect our education funding, protect our schools, and our quality of life here. So those are good friends, great colleagues, and you mentioned the Conard Young Democrats, and that's actually one of the most meaningful endorsements, of course, in part because we've been able to work together to help pass that pay equity bill that you mentioned. And I think getting our students involved in the in government, in the political process, and empowering them and lifting up their voices very appropriately.
That's what this show's all about. Rise up.
Rise up. And so we got a lot of young folks to rise up and actually, and this is going to sound corny, but change the world. And we did. We were one of the first states in the country to pass this pay equity
Tell
bill.
us what this is all about, because I think people read about it in the Current, but they may not understand what pay equity is.
Right. So pay equity is the idea, and it should not be revolutionary. It should be pretty basic, though, that men and women should get paid, the same for the same job, right? But we know that doesn't happen. We know that it's about 80 cents on the dollar right now for women, and compared to men, and and to put that really into like real terms, that's about $10,000, every year for women and their families. It's more than $500,000 over the course of a career. And we know that the poverty rate for elderly women is much, much higher than for men. So, this is something that the gender wage gap that begins upon graduation from college, and it stays with women and their families throughout their entire career. So we passed a law, just went into effect January 1st, that says you're not allowed, an employer, to ask a prospective job candidate, right, what your salary history is. So I can't say to you, Dawn, what do you currently make? right? Because what that does is it continues, right? It keeps that salary anchor going from one job to the next to the next. So we're going to break that cycle, and we passed it 142-4 in the House, 35-1 in the Senate. Bipartisan, had everybody at the table, and it's going to make a real difference.
I have a personal experience with that particular thing. As you know, I'm transgender. When we worked together, I was identifying as Dawn, as a male. When I came out at ABC, my boss actually said, "This is great news, because now I can only pay you 80 cents on the dollar."
Really? It said, okay.
I'm sure
Wow.
I'm sure he meant it as a joke.
Yeah.
But I have encountered in the 6 years since I came out that women do make less. Now, I imagine the factors are from olden times that women would take time off for having babies. Women would be caretakers in the home. But this is 2019.
Right.
So times have changed, and I guess Connecticut is changing with them.
Yeah, and the argument that some people on the opposite side of
The one person in the
debate,
Senate.
well, but the first year, it takes a while to get a bill passed. In the first year, 2017, we proposed it, and it got gutted in the House, and there were a lot of people who were saying, well, wait a minute. The gender wage gap is because these are the choices that women make, right? And I said, well, wait a minute. So a woman, and it doesn't need to be, of course, just a woman who leaves the workforce to care for a child or care for a loved one, but let's say disproportionately it is. So this person then pays financially for the rest of their career for taking care of a child, which one could argue is the most important job, right, of any that are out there. That just seems so unfair. And as a society, we should find that unacceptable.
It's also the subject, not your bill, but the whole idea of sex equity and gender equity and pay equity is similar to what's in the movie featuring, wait, make sure I get it right.
Yeah.
There's a movie based on the life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg that deals with this issue.
Right.
And I'm trying to remember the name, On the Basis of Sex. And it deals with the fact that a man takes care of an elderly parent and doesn't get the same benefits because the law says that a woman generally does that job. Now, that was in the 1970s, and here we are in 2019, and we're still arguing about whether women are supposed to be in the home or not.
Right.
What does your wife think about this bill?
Well,
The law, I should say.
my wife loves it. And
Is she working?
She is just now working outside of the home, but she's been working, I would say, harder than I have been for the last 13 years because she's been at home with our children. But now she's teaching music in Canton, and she loves it. And a lot of times, I mean, as we all well know, when women go back to work, there's been studies that they do everything they've already been doing, and then they throw on top of it, the professional. Job as well. So no, I mean, she's felt, like so many women, she's felt salary discrimination. She's experienced that, and we have 3 children. We want to make sure that they're paid fairly as well, not just our children, but of course all children.
Exactly.
So,
this is for the future generations. I have 3 children as well, as you know. I'm interested in knowing. Tell me about the idea that you'll be going for the state senate. How is that being received at home? Is your family supporting you? Is it exciting for them, or are they worried that there's going to be, where's Dad?
Right. Well, I think politics has to be a family affair. When you get into it in public service, you can't do it without the support of your family. It's very, very hard. I mean, because it takes a toll in terms of, to your point, concerts and just, recitals and things like that. And I still go to those, and that's very, very important. My wife is my high school sweetheart, so we've known each other for, since we were 17, and she knows my background in terms of my dad was a minister, my mother a nurse, and I just grew up in a household that valued public service. So when these opportunities have come up, she knows. She knows that I in my heart and soul want to serve, and she's been very, very supportive. I'm very blessed to have her.
And she also knows, as many of our viewers know, that you used to also have another show besides Derrick and District. You were a reporter at NBC Connecticut. We used to call it NBC 30 back in the day. I was executive producer at the station at the time, for a brief time at least, for about 2.5 years. Tell me about those days and how being a TV reporter feeds into your current career.
Yeah.
Do you still call upon those skills?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, the reason that I went into journalism initially was because I wanted to lift up people's voices who maybe didn't have a voice. I wanted to tell those stories, and I'm sure you can relate to that as a journalist as well. And so I did that for a long time, for about 10 years. I ultimately got out of local news. In part, one, it's not as glamorous as a lot of people think.
No.
So, the hours are difficult, and you're lugging around a tripod, and it's tough work. But I also,
and all kinds of weather too.
And all kinds of weather. I was honestly getting concerned that my work was having, and I'm not saying this is an indictment of local news or journalists, but I'm just speaking personally, that I was kind of making it harder for, let's take New Haven, which is the city I was living in at the time, to survive and to thrive, because I was lifting up things that were negative that went on, right? That, crime and violence, and not really giving an accurate picture of, and so I was starting to question my role in democracy, and if actually I was really strengthening it anymore. And again, this is not an indictment. Journalism is so important, and the people who, at all the stations who cover government and politics, it is critically important for our democracy. So it was just something that I kind of internally was struggling with, what I was doing, the reporting in particular. And so I ended up getting out of journalism and going into working for the mayor of New Haven at the time, and trying to lift up some of the positive things that were going on in the city.
Well, I'm proud to say that we both worked with two journalism legends. We both worked with Joanne Nesty and with Jerry Brooks.
Yep.
Jerry, who just retired. They taught me, as a journalist who came from the chase the ambulance, get the fire on TV, get the suspects, perp walk.
Right.
They taught me the importance of covering our civic duty, our responsibilities as citizens, as covering our government. It was inspiring to me to work with such people who recognized that television news had to be more, especially local television news, had to be more than just if it bleeds, it leads.
Right.
But we both know that it's an advertiser-driven business. It's revenue-based, and people don't tune in to see what the governor has to say. They tune in to see the flashing lights and the flames. I'm interested in knowing a little bit about how, as now going on 3 years as a civic servant, how do you view television? Do you watch TV news anymore?
I do sometimes. I honestly, I think the idea of appointment viewing is getting more and more antiquated, right? If we ask our kids, to sit down at a certain time to watch a certain show doesn't happen as often as it used to, right? Mm-hmm. So, I have my phone on me all the time, and I certainly watch
alerts,
local news on my phone, and read the newspaper and all that. So I try to get educated from a whole bunch of different sources. And I always look for the type of journalism that I really appreciate is the journalism that doesn't try to make the interesting seem important, but makes the important interesting.
Very good. What about the fact that most of the television news these days is about our political divide? Is that something you've seen in Hartford as well? Are we as divided in Hartford and across the state as we are as a country? Because right now, I can't remember a time in my lifetime that we are more divided.
No, I would say in terms of in Hartford, in terms of the General Assembly. So sometimes, and this goes back to TV news, right, and to journalism. Sometimes you might read the paper, look at the news, and say, gosh, they're doing is fighting in Hartford. Because oftentimes, conflict, right, gets kind of lifted up, but that's not actually, the reality. I think in the General Assembly, there's always going to be those topics, right, whether it be the budget or some other things that typically, the two parties are at odds. But the vast majority of the bills that we pass in the General Assembly are bipartisan. And I would say that the last 2 years, we've had 2 bipartisan budgets in a row, which is really unprecedented. So I think, both parties are filled with people, for the most part, who are good public servants. They're trying to do the right thing. And I've been able to reach across the aisle and establish some great relationships. And I think that's how you get things done, to try to listen to folks and not just look at them as other because they're in a different party, and try to understand their perspective. And so the fact that we don't have a completely balkanized media here, like we do nationally, right, where everybody, each party has their own station, right? And we have citizens election financing, which means that you can run for office without taking special interest money as well. That's a great thing. So I think there's some things in terms of state government here that both parties should be really proud of.
How did you get into politics? How does someone who's watching this who says, I want to run for office, how does someone do that now?
Yeah, one, I would say you have the ability to have your voice heard, and you more than you actually probably realize. This is a small state. At the most, you're 2 hours away from the capital, right? I mean, it's not California where you got to fly up to San Francisco if you live.
Sacramento.
Rather. Yes,
you can if you want to.
I did actually know that. I was actually born just outside of Sacramento. But anyway, yes. Thank you. So
hey, I'm once an EP, always an EP.
No,
sorry.
no, absolutely right. We'll do a quiz on the state capitals after. So Tallahassee is
there you go.
Florida.
Yes.
But anyway, I would say get involved. It doesn't have to be with your Republican town committee or your Democratic town committee. I mean, that's one way to go. But let's say, the environment is your thing, right? Join the league, right? Of conservation voters, or, if it's, civil rights, you could join the CCLU or the ACLU. I mean, there is an organization for any issue that you really care about, and get involved, and your voice is needed, and it will be heard.
One of the things I did was I reached out to the town Democratic Council and I said, I want to be involved. And they said, come to meetings.
Right.
So I started going to meetings, not only just town hall meetings, but Democratic Council meetings. And I'm a Democrat. There's a Republican council as well in town. Yeah. And lo and behold, I am an alternate for District 1 in the Democratic Council. So when a vote comes up, I get to have my say to represent my little part of the Aiken community in West Hartford. I love that because for me, it's not something where I'm doing what you're doing, but I'm lending my voice. I'm rising up. And I'm interested in what you think is going on right now with Governor Lamont and the legislature. Tell our viewers what your agenda is in your current position as state rep for Avon, West Hartford, and Farmington. What do we have on tap right now?
Sure. So I think that the top priority for all legislators, regardless of party and regardless of what committee you serve on, has got to be really two things, and that's strengthening our economy. That's something that affects every family. And the budget, right? Because that impacts, you name it. Name an issue that you care about. Public education, support for folks with disabilities, right? The budget has its tentacles everywhere across our state. So we need all hands on deck on those two things. And I think, again, regardless of what committee you're on, we need ideas, we need bold ideas, and we need the ability of people to collaborate and compromise. And that's not a dirty word, at least in my book. Beyond that, there's going to be some issues that folks are going to hear a lot about in terms of, recreational marijuana. Do we legalize or not? Tolls is another one. So we'll hear a lot about those. I could tell you and I don't want to filibuster, so I'll just tick off a few things that
we actually have time.
Early on that I'm focused on. I signed on as an introducer and co-sponsor for Earned Family Leave. I think that not only is that kind of morally the right thing to do, but I think it's actually going to help our economy as well.
Tell us what that is.
So that's essentially helping folks who are working, if they need to take leave to take care of a family member, right? To provide that support. It could be related to the birth of a child. It could be to a sick family member, that type of thing. And again, not only is that something that really all like first world countries are doing in many other states, so we're kind of falling behind, but we need to be able to compete with other states too. And that was part of the reason that I pushed so hard for the pay equity bill. We worked with the Boston Chamber of Commerce. They helped us because they helped get the bill passed in Massachusetts. And they said, we are going to be, this is what the Boston Chamber told us, the premier place, this is our goal, the premier place for working women in the country. It's like, wow, what a bold statement, right?
Because you want to attract women who have career potential and earning potential, and businesses will then hopefully prosper in Connecticut.
Exactly.
Because right now we're bleeding businesses.
Right.
The state is in dire straits, not just financially, but also economically from a perspective of we're not retaining jobs, we're losing residents.
Right. So, I mean, the economy is coming back. It's the growth has not been as robust as it has been in other states. We've recovered the private sector jobs from the recession. Overall, we still haven't because the government jobs, and the government jobs are, of course, because we've been making cuts, right, at the state level, at the local level. It's many municipalities have been cutting back, and then the casinos. They're technically considered government employees, and they've had rough times as well, and they've been cutting back. So, but I agree with you. I mean, we need to do better on job growth, no question. Just a couple other things I want to make sure I mention in terms of bills that I'm working on. I just filed a bill working with the AARP to really crack down on age discrimination.
Yay!
Which is, very important.
Very
and,
important.
you can, in a job interview, you cannot ask the person their age. And we all kind of generally think that that's a good thing, that we're not asking people, hey, how old you are. But an employer can require that to be on a job application. I can ask you your date of birth. I can ask you, what year did you graduate high school? And it's not that hard to determine, right?
Yeah, do the math.
So this is something that I'm going to partner with AARP on, and I think we're going to hopefully change. There's a public health crisis, an epidemic among teens on vaping.
Yeah.
So I had a forum a few weeks ago in terms of coming together, bringing all the stakeholders together to try to determine what the best solutions are. It's scary. 78% increase over the last 2 years in high school of students vaping. And there's a 50% increase in the middle school. So it's actually getting down even lower. So that's going to be an issue. And I think we need to make it easier to vote. The way that we vote in this state is ridiculous compared to other states. Republican states, Democratic states, doesn't matter. Many states across the country, early voting, automatic voter registration. We want more people to vote, and we absolutely need reform. So I'm going to be pushing for that as well.
Why do we have to vote on a Tuesday? Why can't we vote either, maybe electronically isn't so safe right now because, for God's sakes, we get hacked every single day.
Right.
Did you get a Facebook friend request from me?
Right.
Nonsense. But if electronic isn't safe, why can't we vote on Sunday? Why can't we vote on Saturday? Why can't we vote for weeks?
Right.
There should be early voting. There should be some kind of other system besides absentee voting in Connecticut.
Absolutely, agreed. And it disproportionately affects low-income folks who have maybe multiple jobs and who are going from one town to the next, and and the idea that you have to be basically get like a written note to vote absentee. Mm-hmm. It's so antiquated, and there's this canard that it's like, well, the reason that we're going to keep these arcane systems is because of voter fraud. And I don't buy it. I mean, of course we don't want voter fraud. And of course we need to have secure voting, no question. But we can do much better by all of our citizens.
Especially because, for the most part, it's the marginalized folks who are most blocked from getting voting. I know that a lot of people think that their taxes will be hit if they vote, or if they register to vote, or they're afraid they'll get jury duty, which I guess is a possibility if you register to vote. But so many people don't vote. I mean, this last election was a great turnout,
but
we're still talking about 30 to 40 to 50% of the population not voting.
Right, and to think about, just to really focus on how ridiculous it is that it has to be just one day. We know that if it rains, right, let's say on election
turnout
day,
suppressed.
Not only does it impact turnout, but the people who actually come to vote, it impacts how they vote.
What do you
mean?
Isn't that
interesting?
No, I don't understand.
In terms of, there's been studies that show that if the weather is really bad, people vote slightly more conservative. Right, because of just kind of mentally where their mindset is, they feel maybe a little besieged, or they're just their mood is a little bit different, and so it's just interesting. And I'm not kind of bringing that up to cast aspersions on how you vote, but I just mean that it's like that's really kind of scary that the weather, right, is going to dictate our democracy, and in terms of who's in office. I think most people, regardless of party, should say, yeah, we're not really comfortable with that, right?
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit in the time we have left about your work outside the Capitol. Now, I understand you just recently were Vice President of Marketing Communications with the UConn Foundation.
Yep.
What happened?
No, I had a great experience there. It was 4.5 years, and what I really enjoyed helping kind of build and strengthen what we call like UConn Nation. And UConn has challenges. It's one of the only top 20 public universities without an endowment of at least $1 billion. So a lot of these other schools, they have resources that UConn doesn't have, right? And so UConn's, there's really only 3 ways that universities get revenue, if you think about it. It's from tuition dollars, and you don't want to keep just jacking up tuition.
No.
It's from state funding. We know where the state's fiscal challenges are and how it affects higher education. And then it's philanthropy. So if those are the 3 legs, we really need to strengthen the philanthropic piece of it. So it's been great, 4.5 years experience, and I'm excited about the next opportunity.
You've also lectured at Yale, and you've been an adjunct professor at Quinnipiac, Central Connecticut State, Southern Connecticut State, Eastern Connecticut State.
Yeah.
This month, I'm starting as an adjunct professor.
Congratulations.
University of Hartford.
Awesome.
Any advice?
Oh, gosh.
Teaching journalism.
Yeah, no, I think you'll be fantastic. I mean, who am I to give you advice? I guess I would say, be yourself. And I think that students, of course, I mean, this is true, I think, whether you're managing a particular business or whatever, but to set clear expectations, right? To treat everybody fairly, and then to mix in real world experience, because I think students really, that resonates with them. And I love teaching down at Yale, and kids are amazing. And we have some wonderful debates. And
I bet.
I start off the class, I say, look, I'm not going to hide my resume, right? I'm a Democrat, but you do not need to be a Democrat to do well in this class. In fact, quite the opposite. I encourage robust debate, challenging ideas. Just make sure it's all based in fact, and we're going to have a good semester, and we always do.
Tell us the date of your special election to run for the state senate.
So the special election is February 26th, so it's a Tuesday, and hopefully it's not snowing, but even if it is, no matter how you vote, I would encourage people just to come out, and it's our democracy, and I think it's the best system out there. So hopefully we'll be able to get about 5 weeks or so to engage folks, but your voice and your vote is really important.
Thank you, Derek.
Of course, thank you.
Great talking to you.
Yeah, you as well.
We'll have a link to Derek's website on our new website, RiseUpWithDawn.com. It's a new portal where you can watch previous episodes, find out about myself, my guests, make suggestions, make comments, and please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Also, don't miss our new podcast, my podcast with Chardonnay Merlot. It's called Before the War. It's every Tuesday on SoundCloud. I'm Dawn Ennis. I'll see you next episode, and please remember, rise up.
I want to thank all of those who called me wishing it were different. I want to thank you for your support, and I want to thank you genuinely for those who cared in, offering encouragement. Your trust sustains me.